Hi. Before we begin, I'm going to ask everybody to please silence your cell phones. So I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to do that, please. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Karen Allen, President of the Alabama Holocaust Education Center. I'm delighted we're celebrating L'Chaim together today. The Hebrew word haderach means the way or the path. And today, I'd like to tell you about our haderach as we celebrate the AHEC's 20th year. Our journey began in 2002 as a local all-volunteer education committee, teaching the Holocaust via mixed media to teachers and students. In 2013, we were licensed as a 501c3 nonprofit and began to grow our reach beyond Birmingham. Today, through our continuous educational programs to students, teachers, adults, and civic leaders, we are recognized as a statewide organization and have moved into a new state-of-the-art facility on Highland Avenue. Our haderach, our path, isn't only about our new home. It's about those people along the way that have helped elevate this important work in ways that we could not have even imagined. This past year has been huge for us. Just listen to some of our accomplishments. As planned, Lynn Revive retired as our interim director last December. She stepped in at a crucial time in our haderach, helping us in fundraising, design our new home, and overseeing our professional team, which we give you much thanks, Lynn. The Birmingham Jewish Federation then graciously loaned us its CEO, Danny Cohn, to serve as our Chief Administrative Officer to oversee the transition into our new space, helping us prepare for the future. Not only has he been a guiding hand in getting our build-out complete, but Danny also made sure that our bylaws and administrative standards were revamped so that our new executive director would be set up for the utmost success. Danny, we truly have benefited from you being at the helm, and we appreciate you tremendously. Some of you toured AHEC while under construction, and many of you contributed to our now more than ever, never again capital campaign. We have now moved. Our exhibit designs are being installed and in-house programs are occurring. Our diligent search committee interviewed a number of national candidates. In September 1st, Susan Braden-Oresco began as our executive director. Through all this transition, our board of directors was with us every step of the way. When asked a year ago, everyone quickly agreed to not only remain in place for an additional year, they continued to be actively engaged in our processes and decision-making. Volunteers have also participated in other facets of our work. That's because we all believe in our mission of educating about the history and lessons of the Holocaust in order to create a more just and compassionate world that recognizes the dignity, potential, and humanity of every individual. Volunteer opportunities are here for you as we continue on our haderach. You can volunteer as an office assistant, receive docent training, and tour children and adults through our exhibits. Work with us as we embark on strategic planning, learn a survivor's story and teach it on their behalf, or be part of our outreach throughout the state of Alabama. Just ask, and we will match your passion with our AHEC needs. Our honorees today easily fit within our mission of education. In 2018, spearheaded by Sallie Downs, Violins of Hope Birmingham allowed us the opportunity to provide Holocaust education to hundreds of students and educators in the Birmingham area. This further highlighted the strength of our organization and mission. We have chosen unique gifts for our honorees, and they are displayed in the patrons bar out in the lobby area for viewing. Sallie Downs, my dear friend since childhood, accomplishes anything she sets her mind to with fierce determination. Donnellan, alongside Sallie, organized numerous events during the Violins of Hope Week. Dr. Henry Panion's musical talents and award-winning documentary, Dreams of Hope, honors and elevates the stories and voices of victims and survivors. And to you, Amnon and Avshi Weinstein and Violins of Hope in Israel, your tenacity and resolve to tell a story through violins and through words keeps the torch alive. We thank each of you for being part of our journey. The Haderach of AHEC makes me proud. You've all helped to light a path forward that 20 years ago was Phyllis Weinstein's dream. I thank each of you for accompanying us along this path. Today's program was lovingly designed by the fabulous Diane Mooney, and as they say, l'chaim, to life. Let's now welcome Daniel O'Drezen, our 2022 l'chaim chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen, and welcome to everybody here. It is so great to be in person again today after a few years apart. This is a truly special occasion to recognize and support a truly special organization in the Alabama Holocaust Education Center. The annual l'chaim campaign, capped off by this event each year, is the primary source of funding for AHEC's operations. L'chaim, which means to life, is truly the lifeblood of our organization. While we also had an immensely successful capital campaign over the past year, it is l'chaim that allows us to have the impact that Karen so eloquently outlined. With that in mind, I must take a moment to thank those that have already made this amazing campaign possible. For the third year in a row, we are grateful to have Medical Properties Trust as our presenting sponsor. As one of our community's most philanthropic corporate citizens, we are honored to count MPT as part of the AHEC family. This year, we're also so appreciative of the support of companies that call Birmingham home, including Regions Bank, Alabama Power Foundation, Protective Life, Cobbs Allen, Robbins Borden, Arc Realty, Heights Title, and Gratis Capital based out of Atlanta. I additionally want to thank the core group of volunteers that helped to make this possible. Starting with my great co-chair, Steve Royal, who has been a friend and mentor of mine for years, AHEC Vice President for Fundraising, David Silverstein, and our orchestra committee, named as a nod to this year's honorees and led by legendary volunteer Kathy Friedman. This committee, many of whom have a long history with involvement in AHEC and many of whom are new faces, allowed us to expand our donor base and strengthen our connection with the broader community. We would also not be here today without the countless hours of work from our invaluable program coordinator, Hadass Levine, and we owe her a great gratitude. As the grandson of a Holocaust survivor, I've always had a natural connection to this organization. However, for me personally, that connection is strengthened because I'm the son of an educator, and more recently began service on the Mountain Brook Board of Education. On this personal note, I'd like to quickly recognize a past L'chaim honoree and one of the true deans of the Mountain Brook School Board, Joel Rodenstrike, who is here with us this afternoon. Additionally, I'd like to thank one of my fellow board members and our immediate past president, Nikki Barnes, for joining us this afternoon. Throughout her presidency, she has ensured that Mountain Brook schools were welcoming to all students, and she is a true friend of the Jewish community. I mention all this because our true purpose at AHEC is right there in the name, education. Throughout its history, the AHEC has trained more than 1,600 teachers throughout Alabama in Holocaust education. This training has touched over 100,000 students in suburbs, inner cities, and rural communities, instilling in them the lessons to combat anti-Semitism and promote peace and dignity for all. Each of you, by your presence here today and your kind generosity, will allow these numbers to continue to grow and make an ever great impact in the years to come. And it is the years to come that are so important. In her most recent book, Anti-Semitism Here and Now, renowned Holocaust scholar Deborah Lipstadt writes the challenges historians face in attempting to avoid predicting the future. We avoid predictions because we know how quickly things can change, she explains. This unknown, this inability to predict what is to come, is what makes our educational purpose so essential in maintaining now more than ever, never again. With this difficult reality, this unknown in mind, I thank all of you for attending this afternoon and ask that you, if you have not done so already, or even if you have, to please consider making a donation to this year's L'chaim effort. There are QR codes on the back of your programs and the screen behind me that make it easy to donate from your phone, and there are pledge cards located outside the auditorium after the event. Your gift will allow us to grow our impact, and it will honor a special group of people who instilled hope in this community through music and through the memory of those who perished in humanity's darkest hour. With that, I thank you again for your support and now present a video tribute, first played at AIPAC's Policy Conference in 2018, that tells the story that inspired those behind today's honorees, the story of Violins of Hope.
The violin, it's an instrument that speaks of Jewish tradition and storytelling. A fiddler on the roof pouring out his heart through wood and strings. When Isaac Stern was asked why so many Jews played the violin, he said because it was the easiest instrument to pick up and run with. But regardless of its origin, there is no other instrument so strongly tied to the Jewish people. In times of celebration, the violin has been a symbol of life. But in times of great sadness, it has been a source of hope. During the dark years of the Holocaust, Jewish musicians played to bring hope and to their communities, and food and firewood to their families, helping them to survive the war. Some were even forced by the Nazis to play in the camps as their friends and families walked to their deaths. To those who play, and even those who listen, the violin has a neshama, a soul. And so, what do we do when the musicians have long since passed away, but their instruments remain? My father and I, master violin makers in Israel, have tried to answer this question. Our work embodies the spirit of Israel and the soul of the Jewish people. My father will tell you that violins, long silent, like the nation of Israel itself, can be given new life. Meet my father, Amnon Weinstein.
One day came to me a guy, he played on the way to the chamber, gas chamber. He stopped playing after the war, and as he has a grandchild, he wanted to repair the violin that he will play. I opened the violin. I remember there was inside black powder because he was playing beside the crematorium and beside all these horrible places. And I asked him questions, and he told me about what happened there. He told me that people that played, they have seen the family going to the gas chamber. So through the violin, they were going together with them. They couldn't pray. The violin prayed for them. After the war, when all the atrocities that happened in Germany, in Poland, in other places arrived to Israel, this is the most difficult time of my life. When I asked my mother, where is my grandfather, where is my grandmother, where is my aunts, where all of the family, she used to take a book of Vilna to show me the Ponar forest where they killed all the Jewish people, 18,000 people, and say, here is your family. My father, when he learned what happened to his family, how he lost about 400 people, he never spoke again about the Holocaust, never. When the war ended, my father was the head of the Vilna Association in Israel. So many of the new immigrants who survived and escaped came to our house for the first day in Israel. Nobody wanted to play on a German instrument. Nobody wanted to touch it anymore. So they came to my father and said to him, if you are not buying this violin, I'm breaking it or burn it. And for my father this was sacrilege. And he bought every instrument that people bring it to him, and he knew 100% he can never sell it again. He could not fix it, but he could not throw it away.
Amnon's spirit is expressed in the way he works. He brings the violins more to life than they were originally made for. He calls me sometimes and says, listen, there are those two sisters who came here, old ladies, who buried the violin in Holland underground and took it out after the war. And they brought me that violin. I'm going to bring it back to life.
The Holocaust is a story of death, but the Holocaust is also a story of hope, because many people survived. And the music was a part of it. When you know all the stories of the violin, you find that many violins brought hope with them. People that know to play very well and know to speak through the violin can tell you all the stories of the world. Each violin like this is a Jewish violin 100%. So we're buying every violin like this or getting a gift every violin like this. We are restoring the violin, so now when you hear the violin again, he can pray. And if he can pray, he's talking for these people.
If you think about it, just over 70 years ago, Jewish people were not allowed to play. Only in camps, under the most terrible conditions. Today, we take these instruments to the biggest stages in the world.
Look, the Nazis are not anymore. The violins, they are. And the violins are playing. And when they are playing, it is victory. And when it is victory, you cannot take it away.
I cannot tell you how pleased and honored we are to be included in today's program. I'm Gail Bayer, and this is my husband, Jeffrey. The missions of the Alabama Holocaust Education Center and Violins of Hope are close to our hearts, so we have been asked to share a little bit of our own journey. As we all know, the mission of the AHEC is to educate the people of Alabama about the history and lessons of the Holocaust, a time in history that must be remembered.
When Sallie approached us regarding Violins of Hope in 2016, we determined, in light of the controversy and instability created by the national election, Violins of Hope seemed like the perfect opportunity to bring disparate parties together by creating a focus on the concept of shared fates within our community. Both the work of the Weinsteins and the AHEC to create a more just and compassionate world is powerful, synergistic, and exactly, we thought, what our community needed. Our hope was that bringing the violins to Birmingham would be a catalyst for connection and education between many different segments of the community, and that's exactly what Violins of Hope accomplished. In order to build on this success and make certain it was more than just a 4-day event, Gail and I created the Instruments of Hope Unity Fund at the Community Foundation of Greater Birmingham. Its aim is to foster mutual understanding, respect, and promote inclusivity.
Imagine our delight when in May of this year, we were able to spend time with the Weinsteins in their workshop in Tel Aviv. Their passion was palpable, and once again we were incredibly moved and inspired by the power of their work. In the words of Amnon Weinstein, the Violins of Hope represent the voice of the voiceless. In just a minute, you are going to be transported to Amnon's workshop. This time, you will be in the company of none other than the great violinist, conductor, and teacher, Mr. Yitzhak Perlman, and his wife, Toby. What a treat. You will travel with them to Amnon's Tel Aviv workshop, where you will see and hear Amnon telling the Perlmans the story of one of his precious violins. This is an amazing video, courtesy of PBS.
Grace. Grace. It's Grace. Believe me, it's Grace. That's Grace all the way over there. So he says, you don't have to take your shoes off. Well, I never take my shoes off anyway. I can't take my shoes off. They're connected to my braces. I'm good. Okay,
that's why I'm leaving it up to you.
All right. Done. Okay. When you look at the names of the streets of Tel Aviv, and if you were to know each personality that the street is named after, you would basically know Israeli history and a lot of Jewish history, because every person that the street is named after has done something either in the arts, poetry, politics, anything. So it's like an education. So if you look them up, it's what you call a Jewish Google, if you will. Wouldn't it be, you could call it Joogle, that would be nice. It's Jewish Google. So you would really know a lot about history. So now Ben Yehuda, which by the way, he's son of Judah, used to be Yitzhak Perlman. And a lot of people don't know that.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows that except for me. If you Google it, you will find out. Here, I think there is a violin. There's a violin shop here.
We used to be there when you
Yeah, he used to be there.
When you were a kid?
When I lived here, his father loaned me a 3/4 size violin.
Oh.
Yeah. Weinstein, there it is. First one.
Yeah.
אמנון נמצא או לא?
לא, עדיין לא.
זה המערה שלו. Amnon is going to be here any minute, but it's a question of is it a Jewish any minute or a regular any minute.
Yeah, if it's Jewish, you're in trouble.
Oh, no, my picture.
Where?
Right, me.
Oh, yeah.
Photograph.
Yeah.
If you see this, there's a painting of this guy. That's Amnon's father.
I don't believe you. I
No.
don't believe you.
No?
No.
I was telling you that the violin, the last violin I tried of yours, but I'm just. So who made these violins?
It's difficult to say because they are coming from all the world.
Oh, I see.
German, French, and Jewish.
Jewish violin. Show me a Jewish violin.
That's what I'm going to do. That's a violin made by a Jewish maker, Yaakov Zimmerman from Warsaw, and the label is in Yiddish, and a little Star of David here.
Oh my goodness.
Ah.
So when was it used?
The guy was an amateur. He played in his house until the last days that the German came to Warsaw. Then he stepped away, and he asked his best friend to bring the violin to the family in Jerusalem.
So tell me about this.
A colleague of mine wrote me a letter that he found the violin, he opened it, and that's what was inside.
Wow.
Heil Hitler, 1936.
And who made this?
We don't know. The violin owned by a Jewish guy in Germany. Something happened to the violin, and then he brought it to a local guy. The guy opened the violin without permission, did this swastika, Heil Hitler, closed the violin, and the Jewish played on this violin until he passed away.
Oh. Yeah, make sure that there are no strings there.
For the next 1,000 years.
Yes. As we say in English, no strings attached.
Exactly.
So how did these violins come to Birmingham? It does not happen without the love and devotion of Sallie and Kay. As most of you know, Sallie never hears the word no. She is passionate for what is right. Tenacity is her middle name. She has a heart as big as this room and perseverance like no one else I know. Kay is smart, organized, and also committed to what is right. Confident in trusting her instincts, Kay was introduced to a very diverse group and quickly determined she was engaging with like-minded people who shared her sense of decency. These two very special women could run the world if they were so inclined. Thank you both for your commitment to the Violins of Hope, and please know you impacted many lives, Gail and me included. Congratulations, Sallie and Kay, on being the 2022 L'Chaim Honorees. Please enjoy one more video, which was made possible by ABC 3340. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm Sallie Downs, and I first learned about Violins of Hope in 2015 when I watched a story that aired on CBS Sunday morning. I was 62 years old at the time. I was working full-time with my husband in the accounting field, and I had a deep sense of longing, having spent my previous career as Community Relations Director at the ABC television affiliate in Birmingham, doing work that makes a difference to our community at large. Of my many passions, my interest in the Holocaust was something that deeply resonated with me. I could never comprehend how people could destroy other people for no reason, while others just stood by and did nothing. As a Jew born and raised in Birmingham, I witnessed similar intolerance and violence targeting people in the Black community. When I saw the powerful work being done by Amnon and Avshi Weinstein, I knew instantly that my charge was to bring Violins of Hope to Birmingham. I didn't have a plan, but I had faith. So I took the first step, and then another, and I began to witness what faith in action looks like and what can happen if you just believe.
My name is Donnellan, and I too became aware of Violins of Hope through CBS Sunday Morning. I was incredibly moved by how Amnon had converted a tragic situation into a powerful, positive message of hope. Upon conclusion of the program, my husband turned to me and said, "Kay, you're on the Alabama Symphony Board. The violins need to come to Birmingham." Without any hesitation, I took on the challenge. The message was so appealing. I felt there was great importance to share what had happened to the Jewish people, and I also saw many parallels to the civil rights movement. Having the violins here in Birmingham was just ideal. Through a few phone calls, I was able to connect with Sallie. We had never met, and upon that, our project began. Little did I know what was ahead. We put together a committee from a cross-section of our community. There were young, old, Black, white, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim people, along with private citizens, government officials, and academics. When this group of talented individuals began to meet, our project began to evolve. What had started as simply an evening of music became an event-filled week. The combination of Sallie's visionary and my organizational skills made us a great team. I'm not sure Sallie ever stops thinking. Her imagination allows her to dream big, and in our case, that created some extraordinary programs. To make the project a success, we knew marketing would be a big part. The afternoon, we pitched the idea to Eric Land of ABC 3340 and walked away with a commitment. We were beside ourselves with excitement, knowing one of the key pieces of the project had just fallen into place.
As Kay indicated, a multitude of generous, talented people came together and devoted their gifts to bringing Violins of Hope Birmingham to life. I hope you will look through the Violins of Hope program to see the names of everyone who should feel honored along with us today. I'm especially grateful to my friend Kay Donnellan, who found her way to me by way of Phyllis Weinstein of blessed memory. I will be forever grateful when Kay heeded my plea to become my partner as co-project coordinator for Violins of Hope Birmingham. Kay's gifts, her extraordinary organizational skills, not to mention her exceptional sense of reason and grace, were the perfect yin to my yang. I believe that every human being is born with special gifts, our own superpowers of sorts. If we are to live a life of meaning, we have to discover what our unique gifts are and then put them to work in a way that fulfills a greater purpose. George Washington Carver said, "No individual has any right to come into the world and go out of it without leaving behind him distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it. What is the point if we live just for ourselves?"
Our goal with Violins of Hope was to expose as many people as possible. Through the few years of planning, we found that closed doors led to open doors, and our events began to take shape. There was an educational component involving school children and exposing them to the story. There was a musical component allowing the members of the orchestra and students at the School of Fine Arts to play the instruments. And there was a very historical component. We had a community gathering at 16th Street Baptist Church. Approaching Henry Panion to direct the evening at 16th Street Baptist Church is a whole other story that time will not permit. But I wanted to share one of my big takeaways was the joy Sallie, Henry, and I shared the day following his completion of the composition for the solo performance at Dreams of Hope.
I would like everyone to think about this fact. Children are not born with hate in their hearts. Hatred and intolerance are taught, and therefore change is possible. While I acknowledge confronting hate is not easy or as simple as teaching lessons learned from our past, I am certain that education is an essential part of the process. I want to thank the Alabama Holocaust Education Center for taking the lead in this education effort for Violins of Hope Birmingham. They created an outstanding curriculum, and thanks to their extensive network of schools and educators, we were able to bring more than 1,000 students throughout our community to Alice Stevens Center, where they had an interactive and inspiring educational experience. To me, the measure of our success was due in great part to the partnership between Violins of Hope and the Alabama Holocaust Education Center. From beginning to end, I am convinced that God's hand was right there in the middle of everything we came to know as Violins of Hope Birmingham. Those being honored today were simply His instruments.
I'll conclude with a statement by Amnon as we walked through the Civil Rights Park, and I observed his reaction to the exhibits telling Birmingham's history. He said, "Hate is hate, regardless of who is involved. Whether it be the Jews in World War II or the blacks during the Civil Rights Movement, the people are different. The hate experienced is much the same." I believe Violins of Hope was able to remove some of the hate in our community and reignite an effort to bring people in Birmingham together. My one regret is the onset of COVID stopped the momentum. Now, with Alabama Holocaust Education Center, we have an opportunity for a fresh start. I can only begin to imagine the great endeavors ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sallie Downs. I want to thank Eric Land of ABC 3340 for giving Kay and I the opportunity to audition for desk jobs. After reviewing our video, he felt we were better suited for foreign correspondence. So he immediately sent Kay to Timbuktu, and I will be traveling to Never Never Land after today's program. In the video you just saw, Kay ended her comments by saying, "I can only begin to imagine what lies ahead." And that is what I want to share with you now. I asked Violins of Hope founders Amnon and Avshi if they would consider loaning one of their treasured violins to our community to be used by the Alabama Holocaust Education Center. I am profoundly honored to report that they said yes and to this bold request. And Amnon's wife, Asiela, said, "This is an act of sheer love. The feeling is mutual." They have chosen They have chosen a violin for us that was restored and dedicated to the 500,000 Jewish soldiers who fought in the Red Army during World War II. The violin will be on display at the Alabama Holocaust Education Center in an area highlighting liberators. The presence of this incredible instrument will add a dimension to our education curriculum unlike anywhere else in the country. We are exceptionally fortunate and accept this gift with a deep sense of gratitude and commitment. The vision of the Weinsteins has always been to get these precious violins into the hands of young people, students of violin, so they can experience personally and powerfully what victims of the Holocaust endured when forced to play as their family members and friends were paraded to their deaths. Please take a brief look back to Violins of Hope, Birmingham in 2018, when a teacher and her students from the Alabama School of Fine Arts had such an opportunity. The video was produced and provided by Alabama Public Television for us to share with you today.
The violins came to Birmingham on Monday night, and then Tuesday morning we went to the Alabama School of Fine Arts.
My initial thoughts about Violins of Hope was that this would be an amazing experience. Of course, studying the history of the Holocaust, I thought it would be just an amazing emotional and learning experience for the Alabama School of Fine Arts in general.
Every time that we go to a place where, let's say, musical school or kids that can play violin, I always try to encourage them to try and play.
Watching them touch these instruments and then play these instruments, and then you see the connection between, wow, this instrument that I'm playing was held, back then and during these times, and it became a very personal experience for them.
It provided a much more deeper connection with the songs, being the fact that this is from the time period, which I couldn't really get that with my own. So when I actually got a chance to play this one, it was, a better feeling. And I could have cried on stage playing this instrument.
As a teacher, I see year after year a lot of the history is not being passed down like it should. And I think young people lose perspective of what our purpose is, as a human race, and just to share these stories of dark times or of things that were in the past. It allows them to see the progress that has been made, allows them to see how they can make a difference, in the next generations to come.
Without education, we will certainly make the same mistakes that our parents and grandparents and grand-grandparents did. And if we do it hard enough and strong enough and enough times, we can reach enough people to try and make sure that those things will never happen again.
Hatred is hatred is hatred. And what we want to achieve, that first of all the young generation will understand what it is, and then it will never happen again.
The violins give us an opportunity for people, especially young people, who think this is history just like, when they read about in their history books, it's history and it's not current. But when the music plays, it helps us to make a connection to realize that this is now. And it's so important that young people can connect to the reality of what happened. And I think that the violins, through the music, has a way of doing that.
It is for 6 million people that don't have the voice, and these violins are the voice for them.
Holocaust Education Center decided to honor Violins of Hope this year, I had only one request: to bring today's guest, virtuoso violinist Niv Ashkenazi, to Birmingham to perform some selections from his CD released in 2020 called Violins of Hope. When I learned that Amnon had given Niv one of his beloved violins, I asked him, why Niv? Without a trace of hesitation, he said, if you listen to him play, you will know why. Niv received his bachelor's and master's degrees from Juilliard, where he studied with Itzhak Perlman. Amnon said, you can hear Perlman's influence when you listen to Niv perform. As we learned earlier in the PBS video, Amnon's father loaned a violin to Itzhak Perlman when he was a young boy in Tel Aviv. And years later, Amnon met Niv and saw something equally special in this young musician and was moved to endow him with a violin he restored from the Violins of Hope collection. This, too, was an act of sheer love. Please read Niv's bio in your L'chaim program so that I can introduce, without further delay, the remarkably gifted virtuoso, Niv Ashkenazi.
Thank you, Sallie. And as Sallie said, I am Niv Ashkenazi, and I'm here with you today with one of the Violins of Hope. You've heard a lot already about Violins of Hope, but I'll just summarize. It's a collection of instruments that have been restored by Amnon and Avshi Weinstein. All these instruments in some way or another went through the Holocaust. And there's three main things that the Violins of Hope collection does whenever it travels around the world. One of them is to present instruments in exhibition. So they have them out there for people to see and learn about them. They have musicians play on them for concerts. But they also have the education programs, and I think that that's actually a very important third prong that they highlight. And this is what I'd like to talk with you a little bit about today and also play a few pieces for you. What I've seen from my education work, we did about 40 schools in Los Angeles and then also in other different states and cities. And every single time, these instruments help students connect with the material of the Holocaust, which is difficult. It's difficult for them. It's difficult for anyone to kind of comprehend what it was. And this is a way to help students understand better and connect. We don't have as many survivors as we used to, and at some point, we won't have any survivors left. So having an object, at least from that time, can help students connect in a different way, especially when they hear its voice. So the first piece that I'm going to play for you is Schindler's List. Playing on these instruments is a real privilege, and there's a deeper sense of connection to these instruments. I mean, we play normally on instruments. Some of them are over 300 years old, but we don't know who the previous owners are many of the times. And here, with Violins of Hope, part of the importance is knowing who that person was that played it before you, as best that you can. Some instruments we have a lot of history with. Some of them we really don't know too much. For me, I've had this instrument for 5 years, and I'm the only one that's had an instrument from the collection on long-term loan. And so I definitely feel a special connection to this instrument in particular from the ones that I've played in the collection. And I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the story of this instrument. So what we know is that this instrument came from a survivor that made it to the US, and they donated it from there. The rest, basically, we have to look at history and the knowledge of the luthiers, Amnon and Avshi. When they looked at it, they were able to figure out that this instrument was probably made near Yugoslavia, probably around the turn of the century. And it is one of the higher quality instruments of its kind. It has a beautiful Star of David on the back, made out of abalone shell. And this is one of the few things that didn't need a lot of restoration. This just needs cleaning. The rest of the instrument took actually a lot of work, months of work, to restore it back. And this is one of the first ones that they restored. This instrument, I don't know if you guys will be able to see from the audience, but the front is darker than the back of the instrument. And this actually goes with what we can see in the histories, that these instruments, especially the ones that were decorated, were used as decorations on people's walls. When they weren't playing them, that's where they would hang, and the light would come through the window and would slowly bleach the back of these instruments. And you can see that on some of them, including this instrument. The next piece that I'd like to play for you is what I would call a faux klezmer piece. It was written by an American composer in the Jewish style, and it's called Dance of the Rebbitzin. The importance of the education side with Violins of Hope, or just in general the Holocaust, it's so meaningful for me to see what the work that's being done here. Because whenever I have gone into schools with Violins of Hope, there's such a big difference when the students and the teachers have already been working on this subject. When I go in, I can play the violin, I can share about the violin, I can talk about music and the Holocaust, but for them to understand more of the context, everything else that's going on, that's when the work with Violins of Hope truly becomes powerful. And the work that's being done here is amazing and so necessary. So I'm just really happy to be a part of this, and thank you all for having me here. The last piece that I'm going to play for you, this one was a special request by Sallie, and it is Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, or Jerusalem of Gold. And so this is an arrangement especially made for her.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Mollengarden, and I am the Education Director of the Alabama Holocaust Education Center. The Greatest Generation. It's a term that is associated with Americans born in the early 1900s. Americans who fought and died in World War II. But I would argue that there is another greatest generation, those who survived the Holocaust. Their experiences during this upheaval of civilization were not monolithic. Some were able to leave the continent early, forced to flee the only life that they had known. But those were few and far between. Most were trapped when the Germans arrived and endured endless humiliations, starvation, separations, and deportations. They had no one to turn to, even their neighbors. The fact that they survived was totally random. There was no precedent for the coming events that unfolded. When those who survived were liberated, there was no ticker tape parade, not even a home to return to, only a frantic search for remnants of family. Over 175 survivors of the Holocaust would ultimately make their home in Alabama. They arrived in this country at a time when many of the atrocities of the Holocaust had become public knowledge. Yet 51% of the US population in 1945 wanted to either admit fewer refugees from Europe or none at all. These survivors came with scars, scars that would never heal. For some, those scars would impact the rest of their lives. Others were able to put the past behind them and create a new beginning, doing everything possible to blend in and create their own American dream. But still, the personal stories often remain locked away, even for family. After the war, the Western world was ignorant to the Jewish experience under Nazism. Even the post-war International Military Tribunal trial at Nuremberg consciously omitted the testimony of survivors for fear that they would be too emotional to be believable. Instead, the prosecutors relied extensively on written documents. It wasn't until the 1961 trial of Adolf Eichmann that survivor testimony took center stage. Broadcast around the world, the trial allowed survivors to speak of the unfathomable truths that they had witnessed. Many historians date this trial as the moment when the term Holocaust and its events became firmly embedded in the public conscience. Survivors who had heretofore remained silent now felt empowered to share their stories. And for the first time, the symbol of survivors as witnesses emerged fully formed. Alabama survivor Ruth Schroyer Ziegler was a pioneer in first telling her story in November 1951 at the invitation of a Missouri volunteer service organization. In 1993, Reva and Isaac Hirsch gave an interview for the Russ and Dee Fine Show on WERC radio. For Max Steinmetz, it was 1995 when he first spoke at George C. Wallace Community College in Selma in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the liberation of the camps. Also in 1995, Dr. Jerry Rosenberg, a professor of psychology at the University of Alabama, recorded some of the first testimonies of Alabama survivors, including those of Dora Nesselroth, Martin Aaron, Henry Eisenman, and Max Herzl. Those testimonies are housed in the AHEC archives today. The testimonies of Alabama Holocaust survivors are central to the mission of the AHEC. They reveal the individual human experience during the Holocaust, and they bear witness to the suffering as well. And they demand vigilance for the future. Alabama students, educators, and members of the public who hear survivor testimonies are forever changed. Here are just a few comments from students. While I hopefully will never experience the horrible and tragic events that you did, I will face troubles and tribulations, which I can choose to either stop and give up or look for hope and keep striving like you did. You have inspired me to be not only a better student, but a better son, brother, and person. Listening to you telling about it in person is a whole lot better than a paperback book. And then from a teacher, many or most lessons are read between the lines, but you made the lines come to life. No longer was the Holocaust just a word, it was real. None of us wants to believe this level of cruelty is possible, but we must. As the number of Alabama Holocaust survivors dwindle, the torch has been passed to all of us. With your help, the AHEC will ensure that the lessons of the past remain relevant by educating with and preserving the testimonies of Alabama Holocaust survivors. For the dead and the living, the greatest generation will continue to inspire and to teach. Because as Mark Twain once said, history never repeats itself, but it does often rhyme.
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Henry Panion. But before I do that, I want to recognize our event sponsors, the Alabama Holocaust Education Center. And I want to thank them for taking the effort to honor the sponsors and supporters of Violins of Hope, particularly coming to Birmingham. This event, as many of you know, allowed the violins from the Nazi concentration camps that have been restored by the Weinstein family to have a chance to be presented in Birmingham, Alabama. In doing so, this event transcended in many ways time zones, geography, and cultures to demonstrate that we are often more than we think one community. These violins were used as a part of a presentation, and as the sponsors engaged Henry Panion, it allowed his creative genius to bring together a piece and a performance that was magical and could only be called unique and powerful for our country in Birmingham, Alabama. This event, Henry composed a piece based of Christian anthems and Jewish High Holy Day prayers that was performed by a symphony with a concert violinist from Birmingham, Alabama, with a historically black choir, college choir, in the 16th Street Baptist Church, demonstrating the common commitment of the human spirit to push forward good over our past evils and horrors like the Holocaust. Most of all, it highlighted Birmingham's opportunity and role for the world to be a voice for the future of human dignity as well as human rights for all mankind. This led to, as Henry continually expanded on his both excellence and creative genius, to develop a documentary highlighting this not only for those in Birmingham, but for the rest of the world, which led to Dreams of Hope. This documentary performed on PBS and highlighted for over 750, televised over 750 times, seen by over 100 million viewers, winning numerous film awards, 13 Telly Awards and 2 Emmys, clearly demonstrated the power of our single community, the history of the Jewish challenge in America and in Europe, but also the plight of African Americans throughout their days in this country. But most of all, it highlighted our sense of a one community toward a common goal for our future, the recognition and dignity for all mankind. These efforts in many ways could only be pulled off by someone like Henry Panion. And it's all too fitting that we recognize his creative excellence, his contributions to Birmingham, America, and the world in his efforts not only with Dreams of Hope and Violins with Hope, but through numerous other activities as a citizen of our community and a humanitarian of our country. Congratulations and thank you again, Henry, for all that you have done and you will do.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sallie. Other than the human voice, the violin is perhaps the most expressive instrument made. It's been individually crafted. No two people playing the same instrument will ever sound the same. And no single instrument will sound like another violin. Almost like humans, we are individually made, we're individually crafted. And there's perhaps not a more pleasing sound than a single violin than a bunch of violins all together. Likewise, there isn't a more sonorous, harmonious sound than we who are uniquely made. We are individually designed and crafted through our experiences, but when we come together in unity, there isn't a more beautiful sound that can be made on the earth. There's so much to say, and when I sit thinking about writing these things down and hear other people talk, and I just kind of ball those things up and just kind of flow with it. But I'm just really struck by my experience, and my family here could testify to that. We use the word testify in my church. That I thought I knew a lot about World War II and this whole experience about the Holocaust. I've seen all the movies. I grew up with G.I. Joe, and every movie, I'd watch it, Saving Private Ryan. And there I was asked to learn about this experience in ways I had not thought before in a short period of time. I was changed forever. And I was surprised that I was changed in the fashion that I was. And I just felt that if this experience could do all that it did for me, what could it do for many others? Little did we know that the film that came from that night in 16th Street Baptist Church would be so meaningful. And as a musician, as an artist, all you ever want to do is have someone to listen to your music. But for it to become meaningful, it's just something extra. It's the icing on the cake. I'd like to thank so many people. Of course, Sallie, Kay, Jeffrey Gale, and Selwyn, the committee. Many of you are here. I think about David Macon, who may be here, our co-director of the film. I think about Caitlin. And there's these double and triple entendres that are in this film. We had 4 featured girls performing, dancer and 3 other singers. In my mind, we never talked about it, but they represented to me the 4 girls who lost their lives in the 16th Street Baptist Church in many ways. I think about Caitlin playing the Auschwitz violin, circa 1856, I think it was, and how she was moved. And to only be able to play this violin that day, she couldn't take it home to practice it because of its value. But she could play it that day in rehearsals, and then perform it that night. And of course, as an instrumentalist, you want to get to know the instrument. And for those who've seen the film, it's amazing how she was able to bring her own sense of interpretation and expression to that work. Unbelievably. So this Thursday night at 8 o'clock, you will be able to see Dreams of Hope again on PBS. So tune in this Thursday night at 8 o'clock to see that. Unbelievable. In listening to the performance of Schindler's List, and I was taken back to my own experience the first time going to Tel Aviv, many, many years ago, not thinking about this, and going to a rehearsal. And when I would travel to countries to conduct orchestras, they'd always give me a translator. Now, most musicians speak the same language because if it's adagio, capriccio, it's right there on the score, so we all understand that. So I get to rehearsal in Tel Aviv, and there are all these musicians speaking Russian. And of course, that's the first thing that most of you get it. I can tell you, I said, what's going on here? Well, these were all Russian Jews who had come back and were coming home, and they had formed this orchestra that I had never heard an orchestra form like this, particularly in violin, the Ra'anana Symphony Orchestra. And for me to be in Tel Aviv working with this orchestra many, many years ago, it was just mind-blowing. Of course, I got to know them and get to talk about that Little did I know that many years later I'd be working on this project. I'm so honored by this experience. I hope that the story of these violins, and not just the violins, but their owners, live on. And we have more in common than the things that seem to separate us and divide us. I'm honored, and I thank you. I know I'm supposed to go, but I'd be remiss if I didn't single out my family. Jeffrey told me Jewish people bring their family everywhere. So I have mine here. So I'm going to ask you all to stand, starting with the matriarch of our home, my lovely wife, Carol, who may not want to stand right now, but all of my family members right here. Go ahead and stand, guys. Son, George, in-laws. Thank you very much. Thank you.
How lucky I am to follow Selwyn and Henry. Good afternoon. I'm David Silverstein, and I wish I could see your beautiful faces, but I know you're there. Thank you so much for sharing your Sunday afternoon with us and for your support of the Alabama Holocaust Education Center. These past 2 years have certainly been filled with excitement. First, I had the distinct honor of chairing the capital campaign for our new home, which will be located at Temple Emmanuel in the former space occupied by the Discovery School. With the help of my co-chairs, Karen Allen and Fran Gottschall, and the wonderful members of our capital campaign committee, I am pleased to say that we have raised, you ready for this? A little over $4 million. A footnote, and as Daniel pointed out in his opening remarks, the funds that we've raised for the capital campaign go towards the cost of building our new space. L'chaim and the funds raised to this event support the operational carry of AHEC on an annual basis. So it's critical, and we thank you for your continued support of l'chaim. You know, I have no doubt that our new home will provide us with the infrastructure needed to continue the mission of the Holocaust for decades to come. That mission being to train teachers across the state to speak to their students about the Holocaust. In addition to the capital campaign over the last 2 years, we've conducted a nationwide search for a new executive director. Nationwide, and we received some stunningly positive resumes for those that wanted to come to Birmingham and lead our Holocaust Education Center. And we have selected an outstanding new executive director, and it's Susan Braden. Susan is a native of Alabama, and she comes to us from New York, where she was with the Auschwitz Institute. I'd love for Susan to greet you today and share some remarks with you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, David, for that kind introduction. I'm Susan Braden-Oresco, the AHEC's new executive director. I'm delighted to be with you all today for l'chaim. And I know others have said it, but I want to extend a huge thank you to the AHEC's event and orchestra committees, honorees and co-chairs, and board and staff. I started on September 1st. So I walked into the theater today after a mere 2 weeks on the job. It's as if this important annual fundraiser and this incredible turnout happened by magic. But I know that's hardly the truth. But in particular, Hadass Levine, I've quickly learned you kept everyone moving in the right direction with a graceful spirit, and that you're beloved by everyone who helped with this event. So thank you. I was asked to share a little bit about myself today. However, unless I tell you what ignited my passion for this field of work, I can't explain my motivation or why I'm so pleased to work with this organization. So, one of my very first jobs was working with resettled refugees from East Africa in Nashville, Tennessee. I was part of a wraparound direct services team that supported incredibly resilient individuals thousands of miles from their homes in an unfamiliar setting. We helped with things like English language learning classes, basic needs, and citizenship applications. As we got to know one another, I learned about atrocities that I couldn't have imagined as a girl from Alabama who read voraciously in grade school, or even as a college student who loved history. Yet, here were Mrs. Fatima, Mr. Ali, and many others who were trusting me to accompany them in their brokenness and play a small part as they pieced together their lives. Assisting with citizenship applications was particularly telling. It was inconceivable that we had 2 lines on one page of that long document to answer the question describing to authorities what happened to them. All that pain in just 2 lines? I started asking questions with a new sense of urgency. Questions like, how did this happen? Why? And how do we stop it? Through my education and work, I learned that the United States had no official refugee protections or policies in place until after World War II. Then I thought back to my encounters with the refugees in Nashville. What must the Holocaust survivors' experiences have been like? This visceral memory led me to pursue a graduate degree specifically focused on the Holocaust and genocide studies, and it still fuels me now. I'm so pleased to be joining this incredible organization based in my home state at such an exciting time with the relocation to a beautiful new space and the official change in name to reflect our current and future focus across the whole state of Alabama. 18 days on the job. I realize there's plenty to learn from all of you who have worked tirelessly to build and grow the AHEC for 2 decades. There's plenty I don't know. But I do know I am eager to learn and honored to join you in bearing witness. So stay tuned because we're going to continue to do some great things together. Thank you.
So we will be sending out in the very near future an invitation to each of you to join us at the dedication of our new home. I hope it's by the end of the year, but it may be early next year. But stay tuned, and we do hope you will join us at that special event. A side story. I had the pleasure, along with Karen Allen, to meet with Phyllis Weinstein shortly before she passed away. And Karen and I shared with Phyllis the vision for the new home. We certainly did not want to embark on an initiative that Phyllis did not endorse. And I will tell you, I think I remember, and Karen, you can confirm, she had a smile on her face, and I think she will be pleased with the accomplishments that we are about to have. So that was just a great vision for a great meeting that Karen and I had with Phyllis. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge a couple people that have played such an important role in today's program, and I trust you've enjoyed the program today. I think it's just been outstanding. Hadass Levine and Ali Nani have been just tremendous in their efforts to make this program special. And I see Diane Mooney sitting here. Diane, thank you so much. It's my understanding that you've agreed to produce next year's as well. Anyway, thank y'all all so much for your efforts to make this program special. A bit of television info. Tonight, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night, Alabama Public Television and PBS will be airing a 3-part Ken Burns documentary on the Holocaust. I would check your listings to see the exact time for the airing of these documentaries, but they should be very powerful, and I'm looking forward to watching them for sure. After the program today, we will be having a reception in the lobby. This reception is being hosted by Dr. Joe Horton, Sallie Downs' cousin. So we thank you, Joe, for the reception. And also thank Sue Lishkoff for helping produce the reception. So join us and we will toast L'chaim after the program. What a special treat we have to conclude our program. We will have Danny Cohn, accompanied by Neve. Danny will be singing Hatikva, the national anthem for Israel. And as Danny and Neve come out, I ask you to please rise.